Welcome to the Growth Plus Exit podcast, where owners of privately held middle market companies talk about founding, scaling, and exiting their businesses successfully. Learn how to maximize and monetize your business on your own terms. Let's get started.
Hello, I'm Heather Bennett, your host for the Growth Plus Exit podcast, featuring middle market owners and experts talking about founding, growing, scaling, and exiting their businesses on their own terms. Past guests include John Fairclough, founder of Resicon Group, Matt Vukov, co-founder and CEO of TalentCraft, and Tom Parker, co-founder and CEO of Aligned Consulting Group. This episode is brought to you by Newport LLC, a team of seasoned C-suite executives who help CEOs of privately held companies grow, de-risk, and exit their businesses successfully. Newport LLC is a winner of the prestigious Inc. magazine Power Partner Awards, recognizing elite B2B companies. To see the list of winners, visit inc.com/power-partner-awards. To learn more about Newport and what we do, visit us at newportllc.com or, of course, find us on LinkedIn. Before introducing today's guest, I would like to thank Philip D'Souza, a former guest of the podcast, for introducing me. You can find Philip on LinkedIn, of course, as well as on one of the episodes for this podcast. Today's guest is Arlin Sorensen. Arlin is an IT industry icon, having spent over 35 years as a visionary leader and community builder. Sorensen began his career in 1985 by founding Sorensen Computer Connection, an IT services company that specializes in providing technology solutions for the agriculture industry. In the early 2000s, Sorensen led his company through many mergers and acquisitions, transforming it into Heartland Technology Solutions, or HTS. As CEO, he expanded HTS through strategic growth and finally through a successful sale of the company in 2012. And we'll get to talk about that a bit later. Since then, Arlin has continued to be an inspiring IT industry leader. He created globally recognized HTG peer groups to connect IT leaders, founded Oak Road Consulting to support business leaders in transition, and currently serves as the Vice President Ecosystem Evangelism for ConnectWise, which champions community and shared learning. While researching Arlin for this podcast, I found so many accolades and great examples and positive words. It was difficult to simplify all of his contributions to a short bio, which is why it's so long. And I can't wait to learn more from him. Arlin, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's great to be with you, Heather.
So let's get right at it. Let's go right to the beginning. How did you get started in IT?
Well, back in 1982, I was farming with my father and brother and bought an Apple II Plus computer to do our farm accounting on. And, it was something that intrigued me. I didn't really have any exposure to computers while I was in school, but a good friend at the school system in Harlan said I could come in and mess around on their computer. And so I did and fell in love with it and bought a machine and started down that road. And a few years later, I was showing it off to friends and neighbors who would come over to see what a computer could really do. And I was helping them drive into Omaha and buy a machine and come home and help them set it up. And I decided I should start a business around this. And so it was a very accidental thing, but it really helped agriculture, producers, and was fun for me as well. So it was a business that I really, really enjoyed and took off and grew.
So then we'll fast forward. So you created your computer company, started helping people. And then what prompted you to create Heartland Technology Solutions? How did that evolution happen?
Yeah, so SCCI, the company that I founded on my farm in Iowa, we grew to about $4 million in revenue in 1997. And when we got to 2002, we were still stuck at a $4 million run rate. And so I was very, very frustrated with my inability to break through the ceiling. A lot of that had to do with the fact we were in a very rural environment and we had kind of tapped it out. But, I I decided it was time to try something different. And so we started to do some acquisitions. I had a friend that called me one day and said that he had a health issue and he wanted to sell his company to me. And so that kind of thrust me into the acquisition market. And over the next 10 years, we did an additional 7 acquisitions to really grow and scale the company. So, it was a desire to really get outside of Southwest Iowa to serve the Midwest and be able to offer solutions to farm and business clients all over the Midwest.
That's such a good example of that. There's many ways to grow a company besides just increasing revenue, number of clients. And you had that unique opportunity where your friend gave you I'm guessing a little bit lower risk acquisition experience. So then with those other acquisitions, what did you learn about the decision-making process in terms of choosing companies to acquire? Like what were the key things you looked for in a company before acquiring them?
Well, obviously, we were looking for companies that were in good market locations, that had a solid team that they could bring to the table and help us continue to grow those markets. I myself was not really a great financial guy and certainly not a salesperson. And so my second acquisition, I specifically went after a company that had a strong financial leader and a sales manager. And so that gave us a foundation that we could begin to then really plan out how to scale, because we had the technical side covered, we had the financial side and the sales side. And the one area we were missing was an operations person, and we got them in another acquisition. So that drove a lot of my decision making. One of the things I did right was I had a team of advisors. I had my banker, my CPA, and my tax attorney at the table with everyone we interviewed in terms of potential acquisitions. And I empowered them to say no if they saw any reason why we shouldn't do that, because I knew that I was going to say yes, to just making it happen. And so that saved me from making some mistakes that I would have made on my own. So I'm a big believer in having the right people beside you when you're growing and scaling a business. There's a lot of decisions that founders tend to make based on their gut rather than looking at the reality and the numbers. And so having those advisors by my side really helped guide that. And we found 8 that we really liked, and we walked away from a number of others along that journey.
Absolutely. And when, you talk about having that really strong board of advisors that you can trust, how did you come to realize, because when you do a startup, you don't necessarily think about having a board of advisors. How did you get to the decision to say, you know what, I could use some more people to help me make these big decisions as we go forward?
Well, school of hard knocks, right? I made some dumb decisions on my own, and I knew I needed somebody to temper my excitement about continuing to grow the business. I would have grown for growing's sake, but they wanted to make sure that we grew for the right reasons and it was sustainable and we could carry it forward.
That's excellent. That's excellent. So when talking about building advisors, because a lot of the people listening to this podcast range from startups, entrepreneurs building their businesses, to people who have much experience in building businesses but are thinking about exiting. What do you look for in a good advisor? How do you find those really trusted people, besides just saying, well, I need a tax accountant, I need a lawyer? How do you determine who to put on that board?
Well, I mean, a lot of it comes down to relationship. You've got to have a good working relationship. In my case, I knew all these folks, as part of my team before we brought them together around the M&A thing. But, there's a lot of people in the market that are really talented, but you have to find one that fits with you. So you go through an interview process and you have a conversation. You be clear about what it is you're asking them to do, and then you select people that that can work together. And that really was a key part of it. I wanted a team that all my advisors knew one another. They were all from the local area. So, being able to work together and to play off of each other and not just me have three different relationships, but we have one together relationship was really, really important.
Yeah, that is so important with boards and understanding the relationship, not just between the CEO and the board, but also amongst the board members.
Right.
Especially when you think about major decisions or regular major decisions in terms of like audit committee and governance. So what were some of the big turning points with HTS maybe after those acquisitions? Because that was obviously a big, big turning point, making the decision to acquire them. What were some of the bumps on the road after acquiring those companies, bringing them into HTS that you learned from?
Well, one of the first mistakes I made was I announced when we were doing our first acquisition that nothing was going to change. We were going to continue to do business as we'd always done it, and we just had some new teammates on the team in another place. That did not go well because immediately things began to change. So my intentions were that we weren't going to disrupt things, but the reason you buy a company is to change things and to grow your organization. So I learned that right out of the gate that we don't say things like that. My approach was to really be transparent and have conversation as early as we could. But over time, I learned that you don't telegraph a message too early to your team that there's going to be an acquisition or a change coming, because when that happens, they all go into, well, what's that going to mean to me mode, and they quit working. So, I had to learn the hard way that you also, wait until the appropriate time and bring the appropriate people into the conversation, so that you don't disrupt business as you're getting ready to do a major transition. So, a lot of little things along the journey that I had to learn, and most of them I learned the hard way. But as we went further, the team I had built around me really was the key to success. And so they helped keep me in the box and keep me from going too crazy. My management team came up with a concept called mulligans. Once we wrote our business plan, I was allowed 3 mulligans a year because my MO had been, I would come into every leadership team meeting with some new ideas. And my intent was that we were just going to have a conversation. Their thinking was, well, this is what he wants us to go do, so how are we going to go get this done? And it was very disruptive to the team. They couldn't always tell if I was just throwing out an idea or if it was something we wanted to get done. So the agreement we came to was I got 3 mulligans for the year. That was 3 things I could change in the business plan that we would make a right turn on and do. And, that really helped me to slow down and think about what I was talking about, to not throw grenades during our leadership team meeting and see what the response was. And I never did use all 3 after that. The most I ever did was 2 of those. But it's important that we learn how to work together as an internal leadership team. And as a CEO, founder, entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur who never quits thinking of new ideas, you've got to create an environment where people understand how that's going to all work together and where they fit into that process.
Yeah, that's so true. There's such a unique balance when you are at the head of a company, when you're the founder, the CEO, between your role, an important role in being that visionary to see, the bigger picture, the long-term picture, while at the same time being able to relate that and communicate it to a management team who's going to end up executing on which one of those ideas. Yep. So that's a unique balance. I'm glad you pointed that out.
Well, in my career, Heather, I've started 22 different businesses or business units. And, about a third of them were good ideas and went well. About a third of them were okay. A third of them I should have never thought of, and nobody should have ever let me try them. But that's the MO for a lot of us as founders and entrepreneurs. We've got a lot of ideas, and we're not afraid to try them. And we need somebody around us to temper us and help keep us from getting too far outside the box.
Excellent. No, that's absolutely true. And I was at an event last night talking about boards of directors, and one of the questions that came up is how much time should a CEO of their work time be spending talking to any of the board or working with the board? And, the industry standard's about 25%. But the panel there said, it could be as high as 30%, depending on the types of decisions they're making at that time. And that it's such a good excuse to pause, like you said, and maybe not, take one of those mulligans and say, we're gonna pull back on that decision just a bit. So,
Yeah.
so what were some of your proudest moments with HTS?
Well, the proudest moment was the team I built. I mean, certainly I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I surrounded myself with the right people. And, for us to build a company in the middle of a cornfield, literally in Iowa, because it was on my farm in a cornfield, the number of times I had people tell me, you can't do this in the middle of a cornfield and serve customers across 5 states in the Midwest. Yes, you can if you take care of the customer and serve them well. And so, that really was a prideful part of kind of my run. Just the people I was able to surround myself with and the customers we were able to serve. Vendors and others would come to our offices, and every time my phone would ring and say, I think I'm lost. I'm on this gravel road heading out into the middle of nowhere. This can't be right. And I said, just keep driving. You'll come over the next hill and you'll see the office. Because we built 12,500 square foot of office space on the end of my house. So we are literally in the middle of a cornfield. And it was a lot of fun to bring people to the farm. And we still do that a lot today through my work at ConnectWise. But people are really what I'm most proud of, and having surrounded myself with a team that was able to execute and create a business that we were able to successfully transition.
That's awesome. And can you tell me a few of those people that that you really were just so grateful to have had the chance to work with at that time?
Oh yeah, Jane Cage was my partner that was the financial genius of our organization. And she did an amazing job of coming in and taking a very sporadic and loosely organized financial business and turned it into, something that ran like clockwork. She was the no person on our team. So she really is the one that throttled me and held me back on a lot of my ideas, which I didn't appreciate at the time, but I did later for sure. Connie Arntzen came on with me as a service person and became vice president and service manager, and then later became president of the company. She was president when we sold it back in 2012. And she still works with me at ConnectWise today. So she's been with me since 1995. So a lot of long-term people that went through the building of HTS and then came over to HTG, our peer group organization, and now are at ConnectWise with us. Larry Heaton was the person that came along as vice president of sales, and Larry led our sales operation. That was another thing I said early in my career. I believed that we could be technically led and grow a company, through the technical side of the business. I had to eat those words at some point, because if you don't sell things, doesn't matter how good your technicians are. So we had to transition from being a technically led organization to a sales led organization, and Larry led that charge for us. So I had a lot of really great people along the journey, and the success we had was not me; it was the team.
I will also turn that back a little bit to you, in that you seem to have found the formula for creating long-term loyalty with good employees. What do you think your secret is? And I know you work with business owners now. So what would you tell those business owners the secret is to really being able to maintain and keep the loyalty of those just wonderful employees that you know and coworkers that you know are going to help you move forward?
Well, I think being transparent and upfront and honest with the team was an important part of it. Having their interest in mind and including them in the conversations. I've always been a believer that when we did our strategic planning, we didn't just include, the executive leaders. We brought in people from every facet of the business and included them in the process. Because if they helped build the outcome, they were more willing to support the outcome and make it a reality. And so, each year we had planning sessions, and we had too many people in the room, according to, the reality of what many would say. But I was a believer that I wanted somebody to represent every area of the company. I wanted somebody to represent every location we had. And so our planning meetings were, 15 or 20 people. And it slowed it down, but it provided buy-in for everybody, and they would carry that back. And so, it was really relationships. That's where the loyalty came from, creating that trust relationship with people, and we were very intentional about spending time with them and helping them achieve their goals. I was big on having everybody write their life plan and what they wanted to accomplish with their life. And we looked for ways we could help support them achieve those things. And, those are the kinds of things that create loyalty.
Wow, that's very, very powerful. And I've done that method before where you have 15 people in the room, but the intention is that it may take longer, but then for that next year, they're all on board and they're all willing to paddle in the same direction with whatever that plan is. So
Well,
I agree with that.
You always have one or two antagonistic folks on the team, and I invited them to be there. If they were in the room when we were making those decisions, they were far less antagonistic about, not agreeing with what the plan was, because they helped create the plan. And so, some of my leadership team didn't think that was a great idea, but it always worked out. And, you just have to manage those individuals a little bit differently, but let them participate and say their piece. And then when they see that the team's chosen a different route, they'll follow it.
Absolutely. So talking about that next step, what happened? What were the triggers to get you to say, you know what, I think it's time for Heartland Technology Solutions to be sold?
Well, when we did our acquisitions back in 2002, my new partners and I joked that, this is a 10-year run. Let's do a 10-year run, and then we're going to go to market. That really didn't drive the decision, but it did work out that way. I mean, what really drove us, Heather, was I got a phone call from a broker saying, I've got somebody that wants to buy your business. And one of the things I had learned, because we were getting calls, about selling the company back in the 2010 timeframe, and I was spending way too much time talking to people about this, and we'd get to the point where they would say, we really would like to consider buying your company. And I'd say, well, there's a list of non-negotiables I have that, have to be met if I'm going to sell it to anybody. And, I'm a big believer that I wanted to take care of the customers and the employees that got us where we were. And a lot, so some of my non-negotiables had to do with, you can't close the markets we're in. You can't come in and just cherry pick the large customers and close locations. You gotta take care of the employees we have. We're not going to come in and chop 25% of the employees down. And so, every time that I would share those non-negotiables, phone got slammed down, and that was the end of the conversation. But actually, it was Halloween Day in 2012. I got a phone call, and same story. I shared the non-negotiables, and they said, "Yeah, we can live with those." It was like, whoa! Now we're moving to another stage. But in the next 60 days, we were able to pull that deal together and close at the end of the business in the 2012. And so it really just kind of happened. We were getting tired. I was definitely getting tired and running out of energy to keep up with it all. I could look back across our journey, and the first acquisitions we made, we were all excited. We were spending. I mean, I actually moved to one of the towns for 6 months to really bring that location online. 2010, when we did our last acquisition, it was like nobody wanted to go travel there. We were all getting kind of burned out and tired, and so it was time to move on. I knew I was a bottleneck to our continued growth because I just didn't have the energy, and I'd actually started working a lot more on the peer group organization that we were building parallel to this. And so, it was the right time to do it. We got a really, really fair offer, and all of us in the leadership side were ready for a new challenge, and we had a place to go, so it was good.
60 days is fast
It
for
was
a
really fast.
turnaround,
It
like
was
really fast.
intense. It was, we sold to a telco, and they aren't known for fast decision making, but they did in this case, and they sent a team of 5 CPAs to our office, and we pounded due diligence out in a week. I mean, it was unbelievably fast, but it worked, and we got it done.
What surprised you about the process of selling versus when you were the acquirer?
Well, certainly the due diligence that was done on us as a seller was deeper than we were doing on the companies that we bought. So, being in a regulated industry like the telephony guys are, they have a whole different set of rules they follow, and it was a very intense process. There was a lot less, I would say, interaction at the executive side of things. Number one, because some of us were going to transition out with the deal, like myself, and so it was just a very different due diligence process, but I would say a lot more formal and in detail.
Excellent. Yeah, and that is, yeah, due diligence can be very intensive, and like you said, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So but it's worth doing because then you know that the deal is the right one, and
Yep.
it's meant to happen. So you talk about afterward, part of the deal was that you exited your role. So talk about what happens next. So after a leader exits, what do they do then?
Well, that's really a challenge for a lot of people. I see this all the time with my work with our SDS peer groups, which are focused on people that are trying to move from success to significance. Um, you know, most entrepreneurs and founders don't have a plan. It's sort of interesting that they'll run a company for 20, 25, 30 years, have plans for everything, but when it comes to transition and what's next, there is no plan. I was fortunate in that I had our peer group organization, HTG. We had the consulting company. I had a bunch of places that I could channel my energy and what I wanted to do. And so for me, it was a pretty simple transition. But for most, the next chapter is something they really haven't thought about, and it's something that people need to prepare for. The most miserable folks I know are folks that have had very successful exits, but they've lost their identity and their purpose, and they don't know what to do when they get up in the morning. And so it's important to think about that prior to exit and to have a plan in place for how you're going to try to find that next chapter in life. And involve your family, because the impact is really as much on them as it is you. I see so many cases where couples that were getting along fine while they were, he was running a business and she was taking care of the kids and the family and her career, and all of a sudden they've got time together, and husbands come home and try to micromanage the house and create all kinds of chaos, and it just doesn't go well. So you gotta really plan through some of those things. The money's the easy part. It's the relationships and the people and your own personal health and well-being, especially mental health. I see a lot of people that get into some depression challenges after they exit. Doesn't have to be that way. You just have to plan ahead and really have a plan.
No, that is excellent advice. And like you said, it's hard when you're working so hard to grow your business and scale, to take time to step back, even for a short amount of time, to say, well, what comes next? What do I need? What will I need? What will I do afterward? And there's certainly a lot of organizations, even the ones that you work with, a good example, but even in other industries, I think there's a lot more organizations that are paying attention to that post exit or that next step, to help people find. So definitely, with any mental health thing, it's always worth reaching out to resources and asking questions and getting the help you need, maybe even before you think you need it,
Absolutely.
which is good, which is really good.
Well,
So
the other thing about that, Heather, is that, most entrepreneurs and founders that I find haven't really maintained the relationships they've had with friends. And so we did an exercise with our SDS people about just make a list of the people that you have a close enough relationship with that if there was an emergency in the middle of the night, you could pick up the phone and call them and they'd show up. And it was really revealing that the lists were pretty darn short. Outside of family members, there weren't many on it. And we're so consumed with running our companies when we're growing them that we don't intentionally do it, but we just kind of pull away from people, and we don't necessarily maintain those relationships the way we want to. And so we get to the other side of a transition and we're kind of all alone again, like we were when we were leading the company. So you gotta really think ahead and put in place, some intentional things to kind of ease your way into what the next chapter is going to look like. Start before you transition, so there's something on the other side.
that's great advice. Excellent, excellent. So speaking of advice, who have been some of your mentors over the years, and what's some of the best advice that they've given you?
Well, Arnie Bellini, who is the founder of ConnectWise, the company that I now work for, and he hired me after we transitioned, or actually when he bought our peer groups, and I came to ConnectWise that way. Arnie is a serial entrepreneur, a philanthropist, and he challenged me to really build an organization that would support people on their journey through the IT industry. That's what HTG was all about, is how do we help IT company owners be successful? And he created the software platform that would enable that. And HTG really was about a peer group support system, helping people find best practices, benchmarking so they knew what good looked like. And so we partnered together, and he acquired us back in 2018. And so, he was a great motivator and friend, and really pushed me to get outside the box and to really think about growing what we were doing. At the time of our acquisition, we had about 300 people we were serving. Today, we're up over 1,000. And we were in the U.S. and today we're global. So his vision really helped push me along and help me to grow the business. My dad was a really big influence on me in terms of learning how to really think about business and focus on family and balance that. Work-life balance it doesn't exist, number one. So that's the first thing you have to accept. There's no such thing as balance. There's too much of both. So you got to choose. And that was one of the things that I really learned from my dad, was that you have to choose family, because work's always going to be there, and you can work 24 hours a day and still not run out. So you got to learn to really pick how you're going to spend your 168 hours every week. We all get the same amount. The only difference is what we choose to do with them. And so, those lessons that he taught me early on were really important in terms of how do I create a work-life relationship and manage the tension between those things so that I'm doing both as well as I possibly can without, burning myself out. So, those things were really life changing for me and have served me well over the years. Along our journey in IT and in the peer groups, there's so many. It's such a great industry. We've got so many great people in the industry that we've gotten to know and really appreciate. I sit on the board for a company called Integris today, which is one of the rapidly growing MSPs in the IT space. And Rashad and the team there have welcomed me in, and that's been a great experience for me to work with a private equity owned organization. We've turned twice now, and I've learned a lot through that, watching how private equity works and adjusting my mindset around how I can help others learn those things as well. So lots of positive things that have happened and lots of great people that have been part of that journey.
It's so good to hear. And one of, I think, the unique things about you personally is that you're at that unique intersection between agriculture and technology. What do you see happening, now and into the future with that combination of agriculture and technology?
Well, things are going fast in IT. They're going faster in ag tech. I founded an ag tech company back in 1995, and we just sold that a couple of years ago to the general manager that had been running it for me. Pretty much everything today that happens on the farm is certainly controlled by GPS and technology. It's a totally different deal than the back when I was farming. I started farming out of college in 1977. I had 300 acres. I thought I was going to die trying to farm that much. Today, my nephew farms about 3,500 acres, pretty much by himself. And we're able to do that because of the technology. The technology controls every part of the process of planting and fertilizing and spraying the crops. It measures everything that comes out of the field. It's not your grandpa's game anymore. It's all about data. It's all about, measuring and managing those things. We've gotten into the drone area now so that we're able to spot treat areas in a field rather than have to spray the entire field if there's an outbreak of weeds or disease of any kind. It's just completely different. Food production, has increased significantly, which creates some issues on the market side of things. So one of the things about farming, you don't control the weather and you don't control the markets. And so going to Vegas has probably got better odds than farming some of the time. But the reality is that technology is enabling things that we never dreamed of, years ago. And going from where my grandpa was farming with a horse to where we're at today, where autonomy is becoming a big part of what goes on in agriculture, with assisted steering and even autonomous vehicles today. In the next 5 years, it's going to be a very, very different environment. And AI is going to be a big part of that transition. And as AI and that ag tech come together, we're going to see another step up in yields and food production. And we're going to have to find a way to deal with the abundance. We still got people in the world that need food. We just got to figure out how do we get the food from where we make it to where they need it, and do it in a way that really serves them well.
Absolutely. Just a few more questions. I feel like I could talk to you all day. You have so much to share. What are a few of your daily rituals that you find have helped you over the years be successful? I always find it's good when you find a really truly successful business leader, they tend to have very strong belief in daily rituals. So what are your habits that help you succeed?
Well, one of the things I started doing back shortly after Y2K time, Y2K was a very stressful time for us. I had bought into the idea it was going to be the greatest event in the history of IT. And I staffed up in 99, hired an additional dozen engineers, and Y2 came and Y2 left, and there was no business. And so we had to make some hard decisions. And part of the process I went through was beginning to journal, and try to put on paper how I was feeling, and it was a very stressful time. But I carried that forward, and so one of the habits that I got into is I write a blog 5 days a week, every week, and I haven't missed since 2008. And so I find that I get a lot of clarity when it goes through my fingers to the keyboard. And so I write that blog 5 days a week. My daughter writes it on Saturday, so it goes out 6 days a week. And I cover three things. I write about things I've learned in the recent past. Often what I learned yesterday, because I'm always learning something different. I write about my study of Scripture. I'm a Christ follower, and so I read and study the Bible and put my thoughts down on what I'm reading about. I'm currently reading through the Bible a chapter a day, and then I'm writing kind of my commentary on it. And then I share something that I learned from somebody else as the third part of that email. And so, a lot of content going out every day. I tell people on the list that if you read everything I write, there's something wrong with you because it's way too much. But, I find that people, will pick it up on a day that they need to hear something I wrote that made an impact. And I write it for myself because it gives me clarity. It helps me stay focused on the things that matter. But I send it out to a little over 800 people every morning and have a lot of good conversations with folks about things that I write about. So it's all over the map. This week I wrote about work from home versus working in the office and why commutes are good or bad and those kind of things. And I wrote about taking our grandkids to the circus and the different environment the circus is today compared to the way it was 50 years ago when I went. It's all over the map. But for me, it just gives me clarity and helps me understand the discipline. It's part of what I call my 20-mile march, which Jim Collins writes about, and it's one of the foundational parts of it. It just keeps me centered and focused on what matters.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, journaling is such a powerful way to get your thoughts aligned and to help you, like you said, focus on what's important.
Right.
So I have one last question, and before I ask it, I want to point people to your website at connectwise.com, and then, of course, to find you on LinkedIn. So the last question is, share what is a hard lesson you learned while growing all of your businesses that you'd like to share with CEOs to help them avoid, or business owners to help them avoid those issues?
Well, I think for me, the hardest lesson I learned was the importance of taking care of family and relationships, and especially marriage. I made some poor decisions about time management and about focusing on what was important, and I always used the excuse, well, I'm doing it for you. I missed your ball game, or I missed your birthday, or I missed the holiday. I did all these things, but my motive was right. I did it for you. The reality was I didn't do it for them. I did it for myself because I was the hero at work. I was the guy. And, at home, it's not always the case because sometimes I'm not the guy. I'm the bad guy. And so, I really went through a period in the late 90s where I lost my way in terms of really being the right dad and father and husband that I needed to be. And it took some really hard conversations with my wife before I finally got it. I needed a 2x4 upside the head to say, hey, you can't just say I'm doing it for you all the time, because I know that's not true. And I finally came to grips with that and got my act together. But, as business owners, we've got to realize that our business is going to go away. We're not taking it with us, but the relationships we build, the legacy we leave, that's what's going to last. And we've got to be intentional about building that relationship. It doesn't happen when you die. You build it while you live. And we got to live intentionally and make sure that we're building that legacy.
That's incredibly powerful. Thank you. I've been talking with Arlin Sorensen, Vice President with ConnectWise, founder of HTG Peer Groups, Heartland Technology Solutions, and Oak Road Consulting. Arlin, I can't thank you enough for sharing your story, your experiences, and your advice. Just thank you.
Well, it's been a joy to be with you, and hopefully somebody will get some value out of it.
Thank you for listening to the Growth Plus Exit podcast, sponsored by Newport, a unique national business advisory firm. If you enjoyed this show, be sure to share, like, and subscribe for future episodes.